Welcome to the Roy Rundown, a podcast designed to share insights and secrets from top experts in the college sports landscape, guiding you along your own path to success. Join us in real time as we build Roy, dive into the latest NIL trends, and uncover stories from the movers and shakers in the sports business space. You'll hear from an all-star lineup of guests, including athletes, coaches, agents, fans, athletic administrators, and more. Whether you're a student athlete, passionate fan, or anyone in between, this is your go-to resource for leveling up in the new age of college sports.
Welcome, sports fans, to another episode of the Roy Rundown. I am your host, Brandon Brown, sports insider here at Roy, and I'm super excited today to be joined by a guest that I think is going to teach me a lot. As I've said on this podcast a lot of times before, my wheelhouse is football and basketball. That's where I spent the last 10 plus years of my media career. That's where I'm very comfortable. Women's gymnastics, not so much. And that's why I'm very, very excited to welcome Hannah Milton, women's gymnastics member from Western Michigan University. Hannah, thank you so much for taking some time to talk to me today.
Of course, and thank you for having me.
Well, I wanted to say this on camera. I am a Central Michigan graduate. I hope we can get along. I hope we can bury that hatchet a little bit and have a nice chat today. But I'm being dead serious when I say I know little to nothing about women's gymnastics. I did some research. I read a little bit getting ready for this podcast, but I really do expect to learn a lot from you, and I'm excited to talk to you about your sport. And I know a lot of stuff that I've done in my career hasn't been focused on women's gymnastics and a lot of the Olympic sports, but in the world of NIL, it can be huge. The name Livy Dunn still rings huge over the world of NIL, and she was a women's gymnastics athlete at LSU. So I'm really excited to learn about you and your sport and your story. So let's, I guess, start from the beginning. When did gymnastics start for you? Where are you from? How did this world become your world?
Okay, so my dad was actually a gymnast in high school. He did gymnastics. And when I was younger, he tried to put me in all sorts of sports, but the only one that really stuck was gymnastics. I've been doing it since I was 3 years old when I lived in Chicago, moved out to the suburbs. He tried to put me in t-ball and tennis, and I would just cry every time he made me go do those sports. So gymnastics is what stuck, and it was what made me excited. And I've been doing it ever since.
Well, I find it interesting because, again, my world is football and basketball. And in a lot of ways, those guys, quote unquote, win the genetic lottery, right? They're 6'8", they're 300 pounds, they're 7 feet tall. They can jump out of the gym. In gymnastics, it's kind of the same, but in the other direction, you have to be a certain size and your body has to be able to do a certain things. And frankly, not everybody's can do that. So because your dad was a gymnast and because you started at such a young age, but you also, you're 5'3", I think is what it says on the website, right? Which is pretty typical. Gymnasts are usually a little bit smaller. Do you feel like you were built to be a gymnast? Is it kind of that way for you as it is for these giant dudes who play football or basketball or something like that?
Yeah, I would say for gymnastics, it's kind of a combination. It's obviously your talent. And if you have to have talent to make it far, but it's also kind of hard work and opportunity. I think those are the three main factors to be successful in gymnastics. And yeah, I think being on the shorter side has its advantages. There are way more shorter gymnasts than there are tall, but I have friends who are 5'10" and can do gymnastics and have made it to a collegiate level. But definitely I'd say body-wise, being a little shorter is better. But
you said your dad tried you out in other sports. Was your dad all gymnastics his whole life, or did he also play how did that balance kind of happen? And was it a very natural thing at the end of the day for you to be this is what it's going to be for me?
Well, I don't even remember doing much of the other sports. Like, he would put me in T-ball when I was younger. I do remember crying on the field, and he always told me, like, it was the worst to try to even get me to go out on the field. I didn't ever wanna do tennis classes because my dad, he plays tennis now too, just for fun. So he's done a bunch of just sports growing up himself, but he's 6 foot, so he just did gymnastics as a good way to get exercise in high school. And he was like, well, maybe let's put her in this. I did it, maybe she'll like it. And that was kind of just the only thing that really stuck.
Okay. So you start at 3 years old. It's the only thing you want to do. You probably continue doing that all the way through middle school and high school. And that's where I kind of want to talk about this too, because I think it's different than a lot of other sports. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe your school did have a school-sponsored team gymnastics team, but a lot of schools don't, and you can kind of tell me about that part of your life too. So, yeah, I guess take me from maybe like, middle school to high school, where if your high school team does have a team, what's that like? And if it doesn't, I'm sure you're doing like what, club gymnastics and traveling around, and kind of what's that 3 or 4 years like for you as you're getting into young adulthood?
So in middle school, I moved from Chicago to Hinsdale, which is just a suburb right outside of Chicago. And I went to a club gym called IGI. And that's when I first was a part of a team that was big. Before in the city, it was only like me and 2 other girls that were the same level. There wasn't much competition. And I really didn't know if college gymnastics was something that I wanted to do. But being a part of a team, being a part of seeing older girls who are already committed, or everyone from every age, going through the recruiting process, all of that, seeing all of that and being a part of it is what made me decide I wanted to do college gymnastics. And then going into high school, I remember freshman year is when I was for sure, this is what I want to do. And IGI shut down. So then I moved to Big Gymnastics, which is just 10 minutes away from my house. And we did have a high school gymnastics program, but typically that's less competitive. If you wanted to do it in college, you would do it at a club gym and have your coaches help you recruit you.
Okay, let me talk about that, because this is another area I'm very comfortable with when it comes to football and basketball, but not at all with gymnastics. What's the recruiting process like? Is it the same kind of thing where you're getting 20 offers and you're taking visits, and I think there's maybe partial scholarship or maybe full involved? I mean, I think that's a little bit different too. How intense and how competitive is that part of the college gymnastics world?
So the recruiting process for gymnastics is pretty competitive. I mean, there's only 80 or so college gymnastics teams to begin with, so very small amount. And then it depends on each school how many spots they have per year. Sometimes it's only one, and then that depends on if they have a scholarship or a walk-on available. I know some schools do partial scholarships, and I think it's going to change more into that. But when I was in high school, to my knowledge, it was mostly just full ride or walk on. And for the recruiting process, it was mostly just emailing. I had my own website, my own YouTube channel. And then what I found was most beneficial was actually going to college camps in the summer or whenever. And that's how I got recruited from our Region 5 camp. That's when Coach Al saw me, and yeah.
So that's the that was my next question. How come Western Michigan? I mean, you're not that far away. You're a Chicago area kid, and Michigan's not all that far from or Western Michigan specifically, Kalamazoo, not all that far from Chicago. So how did you settle on Western Michigan?
So my junior year, I ended up having to get UCL surgery. So I didn't even know what schools had spots anymore. I was out for most of my junior year, and I was kind of freaking out because I was like, I don't even know what team I'm going to end up on. I hadn't really heard much about Western Michigan, but I had gone to a bunch of college camps, and I was just done. And then my coach from back home was just like, let's just do this Region 5 camp and it'll be your last camp. And this was 2 weeks post like being cleared. So I was able to do everything again. I was getting my skills back. And I went to this Region 5 camp, and that's when Coach Al saw me and he took an interest in me. And I had heard about Western Michigan just because one of my club coaches at IGI actually is an assistant coach there right now. So I knew Don, and I was like, but I didn't know a whole lot. And so then that like is what sparked Coach Al's interest in me. And then I believe like the next week he came to visit me in my gym at home and he watched me practice. And that was on a Monday. And then he offered to invite me to their camp, which was that Saturday, I believe, like right before Halloween. And so then I went down, I visited the campus, I did well at the camp. And that's when I got to meet the head coach, Penny. And then I saw Don again and Al. And 2 days later, I remember on Halloween is when they offered me.
Very cool. So then that's pretty much it. I mean, is it like a commitment type of thing like you see in other sports? Like I'm committed on the spot. Now I'm ready to get there. And then, kind of talk about the 1 year, that you've been in college and how balancing all that, it has become. I mean, that's what you do. You are officially a collegiate gymnast at this point. And what's that been like?
So when he offered me, I didn't commit right away. I mean, I think most coaches want you to take some time to really just make sure you're making the right choice, like lay out all your options. I called a week later and I was like, I want to go here. Like, thank you so much for this opportunity. And then last year was my freshman year, my first ever time being a collegiate athlete. I think definitely it was different because for me, like I had the same schedule every day of high school. It was always go to school, practice from like 3 to 7, and then do homework, go to bed. But in college, for at least for here at Western, our practices are in the morning and then our classes are in the afternoon. So that was something I had to get adjusted to, was like doing all of the physical activity in the morning versus the afternoon and really making sure my body is awake before practice. And then obviously making sure you're keeping up with your body, doing your PT, eating the right way. Like that is something that I definitely like. I had to learn that sleep is important and that you can't go to bed super late if you have practice in the morning. And just managing your time well, making sure your homework is all done, especially in season, because all of our meets are usually on the weekends. So trying to get all your work done before that, like not saving everything for the weekend, because that's the time where you want to focus on the sport.
And I also find it incredible that there are, and you are one of the all around on your team. Like you do it all. Like how's that possible? How can you be good enough to do all of the individual events at the collegiate level and put up good scores in each one and be prepared for each one? They're also different. Your body has to do different things for different events. Like that really does. That's a little, I do know in covering Michigan athletics for the last 10 years, their gymnastics program is very strong. I've learned a little bit about it from a distance. I just find that incredible. So, I mean, congrats to you for being that good. But how is that possible?
Well, actually, so my freshman year, I trained all 4. And then this year I decided to retire bars just because my body, like just to preserve my body. And my like vault, beam, and floor are my strongest events. So just let's focus on those 3. Let's not cause any more pain on bars and focus on those 3 events. But I think each event is very different, like you said. But I would say, beam is 4 inches wide. So that's balance. And then, bars, it's a different type of endurance. Like floor is your cardio, and that's the longest. It's like usually 1 minute and 30 seconds when you go out there to compete floor. That's my favorite event. where you get to dance and tumbling. And then bars is more like swinging, more upper body strength. And then vault is literally like 4 seconds long. Run down the runway and do your vault.
Super explosive.
Yeah.
Potential for, knock on wood, something bad to happen. I always get freaked out when I watch that one. It's like they're just going so fast and you fly through. Yeah. It's crazy. I don't know how you do any of the things that you do, but it's very impressive. And the fact that you're doing all 4 of them, well, 3 of them now is just incredible. How would you grade yourself after your freshman year is now in the books? I read about you a little bit. You put up some very impressive numbers in a couple different events, but how do you feel like you did in year 1?
I'm proud of myself. I definitely, like when I was younger, I would always look at all the college gymnasts and be like, they look perfect. Like how are they doing so good? But like you kind of realize more on like you do get more consistent once you get to college. You're doing sometimes easier routines than you did in club, and you're not really focusing as much on like the quantity, but you're focusing on the quality of your skills. And that's what like helped me a lot to improve my gymnastics. And yeah, I'm proud of how I did freshman year. I earned freshman of the year honors award, and we ended up winning our tournament championship, which I'm also really proud of.
Yeah, that's not much more you could do in year 1, and hopefully continued success and health and all that good stuff. Let's wrap up a little bit with some talks about NIL. As I mentioned at the top of the podcast, you see a lot of football players, a lot of basketball players, women's basketball players kind of at the forefront when it comes to NIL, when it comes to major brand deals. But literally one of, if not the biggest earners in the NIL era has been a women's gymnast, Livy Dunn from LSU. I think she's off on to bigger and better things now, but just what's your take on NIL? What's it like at Western Michigan as a women's gymnastics athlete? And just, kind of how has that been part of your 1 year so far? Because it's all still pretty new. It's kind of Wild West out there a little bit. You guys are probably learning as you go, but what's it been like for you? What's your experience?
I've had a really good experience. We have someone that comes in and tries to help with our NIL too and offer us new brands that we could work with and things like that. I know, like, at least for me, I have a bubbler, like I'm a bubbler ambassador, so I get to promote these drinks and I get them for free, which is nice. And then I also have that like with our local Big Apple Bagels, where we get free food too, which is really nice. And then now I'm on here, which is also awesome. So I think NIL is a great opportunity for athletes to take advantage of their time here and share their story, honestly, to everyone.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And with a sport like women's gymnastics that doesn't have these billion-dollar TV deals, it gives you, a platform like Roy hopefully will give you an opportunity to really kind of create a brand for yourself. I wonder, what kind of thoughts have you put into, working with us here at Roy, and how do you see the platform being beneficial for you, and maybe even taking your NIL, opportunities and earnings to another level? Like, what's your big picture view of what it could be if you had, maybe in a perfect world?
I mean, I think Roy is amazing, and I think it's a great opportunity for fans to be able to like choose who they directly want to support. I know some other apps, people don't know where their money is going towards. And so for this app to be new, and it's very exciting that like fans get to know where their money is going and support them and engage with the athletes.
If you could put together the dream NIL deal for yourself, like what's a brand out there? You mentioned, I remember when I was in college, if I could get free food and drink, I'd have probably been pretty much set. Like, that's pretty awesome as it is. But there are opportunities out there, and you never know where they might come from or why a brand might seek you out. What would be one that you would say, like, if I could put something together with them, that would be just out of control?
I would definitely say Aloe.
Okay.
I love their clothes. I have a few sets myself, but I would say Aloe.
That's one I've seen. I feel like I'm trying to think. I think they did a deal with JJ McCarthy, if I'm not mistaken, the quarterback at Michigan a couple of years ago. I think he had a deal with them. What is it about that brand? I mean, I'm just kind of unfamiliar with it. I don't know that much about it. What is it about them that has you kind of drawn in a little bit?
Well, I believe it's originally like a yoga brand.
Okay.
But they have like, it's kind of like Lululemon, just their own brand. And I know they like kind of blew up for like their matching sets. So like everything, like their tops and their bottoms, like they have same colors, and they don't always have the same colors that come out. Like for each season or so, they'll like enter in new colors, and that's what makes people go crazy. They're like, oh, did you see they just came out with did you just see they came out with the color pink? Like, let's go get this set. And then they sell out really fast. So that's what makes them kind of special, I would say.
Well, Aloe, if you're out there listening, Hannah Milton out here doing big things at Western Michigan. We will try to maybe do a little tag on Twitter, Instagram, see if anything can happen there. That would be incredible. I just love the opportunities that different athletes are getting, again, in sports that I'm not as familiar with. Before I let you go off from the podcast here, what are you doing right now? What's kind of next for you as you put a bow on your freshman season? And again, this is, a world that's unfamiliar to me. What's the calendar like right now? What part of your career are you in, and what's it look like in, going into the sophomore year for yourself?
Well, right now we're in the middle of season. We have our home meet this Sunday. So everyone watch it online or come if you're here at Western Michigan, come support us. Just finishing up, getting through season. Every weekend we have a meet up until our MAC tournament championships and potentially our regionals. And then just doing school, figuring out what I want to do for work as well in the future, because you're only an athlete for 4 years, but after that you're going to be working. So getting involved there too in school. Very
good. Well, that makes me feel even more grateful that you were able to carve out some time. You've got meets going on the weekend, and no wonder it's been a busy schedule for you. But Hannah, thank you so much for giving us some of your time today. Like I said, I felt pretty ignorant coming in. Like I said, I tried to do a little bit of research, but now I feel a little bit more informed. And like I said, all the health in the world, lots of happiness, and lots of success to you there at Western Michigan.
Thank you.